All right. I'm trying to add myself to what? Nah, fuck that guy's trash. We don't That appears to work. There we go. Now let me see if it pops up. That appears to work. There we go. Oh, right. There we go. Okay. Okay, we're going to remove that troll because he's stupid and you don't like him. You understand? Oh, right. There we go. Okay. Right. We're going to remove to add the other trolls to the trolls. Ugh. I hate that guy. Can I mute him? Shut up. Nobody's talking to me. Unmute. Okay. Hello? Shut up, girl. Okay. Hello? Shut up, girl. Oh, that's on the phone. I'm gonna leave that. All right, let me turn my volume down a little bit so I don't have to hear myself because that's creepy. Okay, let me change the layout now to where it's full page. And let's try this again, guys. We're gonna be about 2 minutes in. As soon as there we go. Okay, we're gonna full screen it, be out. There's so much of a delay. Oh my god.
In this area, checking who's coming and who was going to make sure that everybody there and passing through there, was meant to be there, had visas and so on and so forth. Working that day was 44-year-old David Malland, though he went by his middle name of Chris. He was from Minnesota, an Air Force veteran, engaged to be married, and had worked Border Patrol for the last 15 years. He was parked along the southbound lane, watching all the vehicles passing through. A lot of them probably just, crossed the border from Canada into the United States only minutes prior. At 3:15, though, one car in particular, it caught his eye. It was a 2015 blue Toyota Prius, North Carolina plates. That vehicle had, in fact, been on the authorities' radar for about a week by this point. It was even observed earlier on that very day. Agent Malland flashed lights and he pulled this Prius over, and a couple of more, law enforcement vehicles arrived soon after to just kind of get around this car and make sure it's all good to go. See, two people inside this Prius had come to the authorities' attention earlier on after the employees at a hotel they'd been staying at expressed concern. They'd been wearing tactical gear, were armed, and so, this person called authorities and said, make sure to keep an eye on them. And so they had. Now, finally, Agent Malland was pulling them over for what appeared to be a routine traffic stop. But minutes after agents walked over to that pulled-up Prius, shots rang out. Shots fired by those inside. Shots fired by a woman opening up on the agents surrounding her Prius. Seconds later, Agent Malland lay in the cold snow. One of the suspects lay dead inside that Prius, and the other lay also in the snow outside, injured and shot. Chris Malland, he was rushed into hospital, but tragically, 45 minutes after he pulled over that Toyota Prius at 4 p.m., he was pronounced dead.
Breaking news tonight in Vermont, a Border Patrol agent has been shot and killed near the Canadian border on I-91 in Coventry. The FBI says one suspect was also killed, another was wounded. Officials insist there's no threat to the public. Parts of the highway will remain closed, though, during the investigation.
The two assailants who had been inside that car would be named as 21-year-old Teresa Youngblood from Seattle and 28-year-old Ophelia Bockholt from Germany. Ophelia was a transgender woman to Carola and Johannes. Ophelia had worked as a quantitative trader at Tower Research Capital in New York City, which basically means they implemented models using mathematics to find trades, investments, that sort of thing. It's very numbers heavy, algorithmy, mathematically equationy, the mind boggles, frankly. And the mind would also boggle at the salary she was on in that firm in New York City. But that's what she did, and she was pretty good at it. However, come this incident, January 2025, Ophelia hadn't worked there for quite some time, so she actually quit that job in the October of 2023. Due to her quitting that job and her actually being from Germany, visa, H-1B visa had actually expired also. So that was one of the reasons the Border Patrol were kind of like, Ophelia was the person killed in the shootout with police. Teresa was from Washington State and had attended an elite private school there, had studied computer science, and was in fact engaged to be married. Her fiancé was a man named Max Snyder. They'd gone to school together, and much like Ophelia and Teresa, he too studied computers. At the time of the shootout in northern Vermont, January 2025, Max, where was he, I hear you ask? He was in California, in jail in California. In jail for what? Murder. The very same thing Teresa herself would now be in jail for in Vermont. Hundreds would turn up to Chris Malland's funeral, and he was finally laid to rest in Fort Snelling National Cemetery with full military honors. But the insanity of this story, it's only just beginning. See, the people involved, Ophelia and Teresa, and even Teresa's fiancé, Max Snyder, friends and family would say they had all been acting different of late. Personality changes, stark ones, secret phones, mysterious trips. Ophelia had quit her job as a quantitative trader in October of 2023 and then vanished. Teresa had been reported missing by her parents in May of 2024. These three people, Max, Teresa, and Ophelia, they were all linked together by a cult. The Zizian cult. What's been called by those that knew them as a death cult, if you can believe that. Look at you. All right, so I hear you're barking, big dog. You're probably wondering, what the heck is a Zizian, right? Where are we going with this? Well, it's a strange, you probably got that already, intellectual group of, you got mathematicians, intellectuals, some of whom worked at NASA, Google, high-tech shit, research institutes, a lot of them with artificial intelligence, and it's been linked to at least 6 deaths across the United States. That deadly shootout in Vermont, a double homicide of concerned parents in Pennsylvania, and 2 brutal attacks on the same landlord in California. And it all began with Jack Amadeus Ziz Lasoda, the head of the Zizian cult. Yeah. Ziz, as Jack Lasoda goes, transgender, was from Alaska, born in 1991, and studied computer science, if you can believe that. Computers. Again, Ziz, was described as a hacker. From her very earliest years, always kind of struggled, sort of socially, would have these big outbursts. But when they were in high school, they were able to hack their school's computer system to get payroll information and all this kind of stuff. Ziz's own father had worked with AI, so it seemed to be kind of the family business. And Ziz would go and intern at NASA. Then Ziz moved to the Bay Area for the tech industry, though Ziz's time in the area doesn't seem to have gone too well. Ziz at this time ran a blog titled Sinceriously. It's very much an engineer's or your very technical person's mind viewing the world. Everything is flowcharts, hacking, statements, true or false, extrapolations. A lot of people involved in this group are neurodivergent. You know, you can tell it's a computer nerd trying to write philosophy because that's exactly how it reads. It's full of technical, uneloquent language that constantly references nerdy pop culture. That doesn't have the same one-track mind. It'll largely come off as unintelligible. See, Ziz at this time was drawn to the rationalist subculture, which was a community that sprung up in Silicon Valley around computers and the early internet since around like the early 2000s. Basically, it's a group, it's a community of people who think very rationally about the issues, modern technology, computers, artificial intelligence, all the issues that raises, and to think in how can we solve these problems rationally. Altruism. How can we use technology to, make the world a better place for everybody, to solve all these existential issues? Transhumanism, can we make robots out of ourselves? Make ourselves upload your mind to, it's all very cyberpunky kind of type stuff. And much of it also has to do with, as you can imagine, artificial intelligence, probably the most complex issue where the world is facing, these days. Will AI keep growing, eventually turn into Skynet and kill us all? Here's hoping. So rationalists are simply a community who are interested in these type of topics, which are pretty interesting. But Ziz will take on this to the next level, and then some. Ziz began to live on a boat, was trans and vegan, and was unsuccessfully trying to break into Silicon Valley, and things weren't going great for her around the year 2017. Ziz's vlog, Sinceriously, really starts to get more bizarre and darker as time went by. Ziz had been living on a boat for about 5 months, couldn't get a job, became more and more obsessed with rationalism and working on computers all day, and kind of started to view people as less than people, more like things. Soon Ziz would meet another person, a Gwen Danielson, who would join Ziz on the rationalist fleet they were building. Gwen believed that people, that's you and me, with multiple personalities inside our head, and you can activate these multiple personalities by switching different hemispheres in your brain. You might have one personality on this side, another personality on the other side. They can be so different, they can be different genders, and if you can set one hemisphere of your brain to sleep, you can activate the other personality. Who knows? So they were starting this rationalist fleet in the San Francisco Bay Area. I mean, one of the main reasons was they couldn't afford rent because it's a joke there. So they were like, hey, come on, we'll go live on this boat. We can spend all our time clacky and doing computer things. And I mean, they only had one boat at the time, so I'm not sure if that qualifies as a fleet. But humble beginnings and all that. Maybe this will keep growing and growing. So the rationalist community, very big in Silicon Valley, and both Ziz and Gwen would become well known in it, or I guess I should say infamous in it. Let me read you a brief snippet from Ziz's blog so you can kind of get an idea of what was going on up here. I described how in Rationalist Fleet, me and Gwen ended up doing all the important work, most of the object level labor. But what mattered most was steering, course correction, executive decisions. These decisions could only be made by someone who was aligned as an optimizer, as in their entire brain. How this ultimately required sociopathy, for being unpwned by the external world. They said sociopathy to avoid being pwned was a tough game. Miss one piece, and you would be pwned. Everyone would try to pwn you. They said they would try to pwn me. What? Ziz and Gwen had ties to official rationalist groups like the CFA or the Center for Applied Rationality, or the MIORI, which is the Machine Intelligence Research Institute, both interested in rationality, the risks of AI, etc., etc. But over time, Ziz started to go a little bit more extreme.
Any thoughts so far, you guys? I know we only talked about the one member, the border agent, but yeah, very soon it's about to start going pretty fucked up. There's going to be I'm talking about ferry boats, Alaska, sinking ships, and faking deaths, and murder, and suicide. It's just going to all go just insane. Katana Blades, it's going to go nuts. Go ahead. I'm weird about like I don't know, just making y'all watch somebody else's video and not stopping to do some sort of commentary or whatever on it. It's just fucking weird. So yeah. Well, okay, let's get back to the video.
Sort of an anarchist. She sort of viewed herself as a hero, frankly, as a hero, though those who knew her would say she actually viewed herself as a Sith, like a Sith Lord, like from Star Wars, which rocks, frankly. But Ziz was described as a master manipulator who was extremely skilled at targeting those who were naive and vulnerable, using all sorts of words and phrases that would become integral to the Zizian movement. Single good, non-good, collapsing the timeline, because of course they believed in, multiverses, so, one single decision can burn down an entire timeline. This is exhausting. That you can logic yourself through any situation to always come out on top and never lose, or get pwned, of course, and that you can ignore basic human behavior. They wanted to enforce altruism to all living things via violent means, enforcing veganism. What does all this mean? I have no idea either. It's all sort of that insane cult jargon you see with many of them. You kind of need to be insane to get it. But ultimately, it comes down to enforcing beliefs on others for complete control of them. For example, what did Ziz and the others do to new or prospective members? Cut them off from friends and family, of course. Classic cult behavior with their own jargon and terminology, and you're either with them or against them. And slowly but surely, targeting those Ziz knew were vulnerable, the group began to grow. A lot of them seem very neck-beardy, to be sure. You can imagine a fair few fedoras were worn, and a katana will pop up at one stage. Maybe even this person was a Zizian. Zizians would believe that, the end justifies the means. So if the means murder, well, so be it. And hey, listen, there's multiverses here. So if we kill them in this timeline, they'll be fine in another one, so don't worry about it. Because in that other timeline, you didn't decide to do something bad, so therefore you don't deserve to die. What their actual goals were, though, seems kind of like sort of unclear. Mainly it just seems like they were out there just to exist. Though maybe that also has to do with the fact that Ziz Lasota, their leader, died. Sort of. In 2019, they had protested the Center for Applied Rationality Alumni Reunion. By this time, Ziz and the group had long been ostracized from normal rationalists. The Zizians all wore black robes and Guy Fawkes masks, protesting this retreat in the Northern California woods outside of San Francisco. They surrounded all the entrances and exits and refused to leave. They originally had intended to stop people from attending the venue, but they couldn't even get that right. They messed up and arrived late. So instead, they decided to prevent anyone from leaving, parking a van sideways on this small bridge. The CFA, or Center for Applied Rationality, it's a think tank associated with rationalism. Though Ziz had come to believe they were all corrupted, sex predators, scandalous, discriminatory, all that. At the scene was Ziz, of course. Right hand, Gwen Danielson, was there, along with two other Zizians, Emma Borhanian and Alexander Leatham. Emma and Alexander, of course, being top Zizian lieutenants by this point. This led to a bit of a standoff as the police believed these Zizians were armed and SWAT teams were called. This all became minor news at the time. The Zizians were all arrested and faced multiple charges, and they in turn accused the police of anti-trans discrimination. Though this seemed like a minor incident at the time, it would lead the Zizians off the cliff. Soon after, the Zizians, they decided, okay, we're done with the rationalist fleet. That ain't working out too well. It's back to dry land we go. So they all moved into these RVs on land owned by a man named Curtis Lind. And so the Zizian fleet, remember, it was pretty much made up of one boat called the Caleb that would be abandoned and sunk in Half Moon Bay. And so the next chapter in this bizarre tale of these vegan Sith Zizians began, and things would get very violent very soon. Curtis Lind was not part of the cult, but he was friendly with some of the members, and he had met them down at the docks. He was interested in boats himself. And so he said, you can move into RVs here on my land. I'll give you a good deal. This was in Vallejo, California. The 80-year-old wasn't doing this out of the kindness of his heart. They were renting, but it was cheaper than what others would charge. He envisioned that this would be a place for artists and so on. He was a patron of the arts. These were not artists he was inviting. While living there, the Zizians were going through some legal difficulties, owing to the protests and arrests at the CFA retreat. That protest had not only made them infamous, it would be the catalyst for a lot of what was to come. And they were really not making it easier for themselves by flat out refusing to hire any attorneys who were not vegan. It's really not going great for anybody at this point, is it? However, then over time, things would get worse because relations between the Zizians and Curtis Lind, they would start to get awkward, a little bit tense. See, they would move into Curtis Lind's land and then the pandemic would hit. California, then the state would mandate banning all evictions. You're not allowed to evict anybody. So the Zizians were like, well, he can't evict us because the state says he can't, so how about we just stop paying rent then? What's he gonna do? And so things became tense. Curtis files to evict them. These Zizians started carrying around knives in full view of Curtis. Curtis got a gun. Then on August 19th, 2022, Ziv died in a boating accident. Allegedly, Ziz was out there on a sailboat in the San Francisco Bay, and she fell into the water at night. The Coast Guard were even called. Searches were done for hours, but Ziz's body was never recovered. Jack Amadeus Lasoda left our lives, but not our hearts, on August 19th after a boating accident. Loving adventure, friends and family, music, blueberries, biking, computer games and animals, you are missed. Here's one message of condolence. Jack, you're one of this age's visionary philosophers. Reading your work was a privilege, and I have every hope your manuscripts will continue to shape the world of rationality for years to come. A life cut too short. The world is unquestionably smaller now. So now, no lawsuit for Ziz, and Gwen Danielson's right hand gal, she would disappear herself soon after. Both Ziz and Gwen, they actually had active arrest warrants out for them since April 2022. So them just having to disappear and or die made sense, Why not at this point? Gwen Danielson, in fact, would fake her own death, according to her lawyer who, why is Gwen not turning up to court? I think she's dead. Though she would be spotted by numerous people hanging out at that trailer park after she died. Maybe it's a ghost. So now, back to the Zizian trailer park, with allegedly both the number 1 Ziz and number 2 Gwen. Allegedly they're both dead, wink wink. Things still continued on Curtis Lind's land, and the Zizians, by this stage, they numbered over 20 people. They would eventually reach a very explosive boiling point. By this stage, even the locals were describing them as a cult, witnessing them walking around naked, wearing gas masks all the time, carrying weapons and such. They were kind of becoming infamous in this area as the local weirdos. Stay away from them. And they were basically in there working on computers, clackety, on AI, on things, quantitative stuff, folks, quantitative stuff in these trailers all day. Solar-powered shit above the trailers, but not for long. What happened that day in November 2022 is unclear. Curtis Lind says that although tensions were pretty high between himself and the Zizians he was trying to kick out, this particular day they had asked him to come down to the land to fix a water leak. They had a problem with the water, so Curtis says, all right, I'll come down, I'll fix it for you. There's two sides to this story about what really happened. The Zizians said he came down and was threatening them with a firearm. Curtis says he went down there to fix the water leak, and suddenly they started laying into him, attacking him with a katana. He says at one point he just looked down, the sword was sticking through his body. He'd been stabbed with a katana, and he would actually lose a peeper. One of his eyes would be cut out from the blade. They studied the blade. Curtis then whipped out his gun, shooting two people. Alexander Leatham, injuring. Emma Borhanian, killing. Curtis, the old fella, still with a sword sticking out of him, he managed to go to a nearby neighbor's for help, was airlifted to a hospital. He was lucky to be alive. Curtis Lind would require 1 month of hospitalization for his injuries, which included approximately 50 puncture wounds, the loss of his right eye, a sword wound through his chest, and facial lacerations. Emma Rohanian died at the scene.
Patrick McMillan shows us how he found his landlord early Sunday morning, crouching over bleeding with a samurai sword through his chest.
He banged on my door and I woke up and came out. He said, I'm dying, and he had blood squirting out of him and that sword sticking through him.
McMillan says his 80-year-old landlord, Kurt Lind, had been brutally attacked by other tenants of the Vallejo property, who Lind was in the process of evicting because they hadn't paid rent in years.
They've been here for 3 years and they wouldn't leave, and it's taken him a long time to get into court and get, an eviction notice on him. They found out about the eviction notice. They figured, I guess, if they killed him, that he couldn't be evicted.
But McMillan says Lind had a gun and shot 2 of his attackers.
There was one that was shot dead and the other had 3 bullets in her.
This whole thing is just, it's bizarre. It's like it doesn't feel real.
Carl Lind can't believe what his father has endured. He says the tenants had basically taken over the property and taken advantage of his father's generosity.
And he just wanted this as a place to let artists or woodworkers or electricians be able to come and live in a trailer, and then have a little container next to it where they could do work and put their tools and have a safe place.
I've known him for 15 years, and he will help anybody, and he is always getting taken advantage of, these people that he helps. He just doesn't understand that no good deed goes unpunished.
Kurt Lind is recovering from multiple stab wounds, and his family says he may lose an eye. Police say 2 people are now in custody on murder charges.
Prosecutors would side with Curtis Lind, and the injured Alexander Leatham and another Zizian, a Surrey Dow, they would be charged with Emma Borhanian's murder. Over the next few years, while in jail awaiting trial, they would both try to escape multiple times. See, the prosecutors said that Curtis Lind was acting in self-defense, and even though he pulled the trigger that killed Emma Borhanian, she would never have been killed if the Zizians hadn't attacked Curtis Lind. So therefore, the Zizians are responsible for her death. They were then charged with attempted murder, and a search of the property after the attack would uncover some weird shit in the trailers there. I'm talking used surgical equipment. What the hell were they doing to each other? I don't want to know. Like a dozen laptops, all sorts of expensive computer equipment. Who really knows what they were doing on that property? The mind boggles, and the attacks linked to the Zizians would only get darker. After this incident, it appears many of the Zizians went their separate ways, though remained connected online, and a number would reappear in Chapel Hill, North Carolina. So now let's go to late December 2022, 1 month after the attack on Curtis Lind in Vallejo. The Zizians leader, Jack Ziz Losota, is believed to be dead, into the drink at the bottom of the San Francisco Bay, but that hasn't stopped the Zizians, who are still going from strength to strength. The numbers only seem to be growing. Except there's now 1 dead, Emma Borhanian, and 2 are in police custody charged with her death, Alexander Leatham and a Surrey Dow. It wouldn't be long before they struck again, this time minutes before midnight, New Year's Eve. It was a cold winter in Chester Heights, a wealthy suburb of Philadelphia, when Richard and Rita Zajko let 2 people into their home at around 11:30 p.m. on December 31st, 2022. Less than 2 minutes later, screams were heard coming from their home. Some shouting, "Mom," and "Oh my God." Lights in the house would flicker, and the 2 people then left the Zajko home. The bodies of Richard and Rita wouldn't be discovered for days until a welfare check was requested, and ultimately, they were both located in the bedroom of their own home, having both been shot in the head.
Pennsylvania State Police are investigating the deaths of Richard and Rita Zajko in Chester Heights. The Delaware County Medical Examiner ruled their deaths a homicide.
It's shocking. It's something that you wouldn't imagine even happening here.
State police say they were called to the home on Highland Drive for a welfare check on Monday. They say the Zajkos were both found inside the home. Neighbors can't believe what happened on their quiet block.
A brutal double homicide of these two normal, happy neighbors. They owned numerous properties in the area and were well liked by all their tenants. One person saying about Richard, he was a great guy, great landlord, great person all around. The wife was an amazing person as well. Police began canvassing the entire neighborhood, questioning their many tenants as they owned numerous apartments, but it was all coming up short. Who would commit this double homicide? And the police announced they didn't believe this to be a random act of violence. Soon, the couple's daughter and only child was tracked down, her name being Michelle Zajko. She was well educated and had worked around the country. Michelle was 30 years old at the time and a high flyer. She had a master's degree in bioinformatics from Temple University, had worked for NASA, and was currently working as a researcher at the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia. When questioned as to her whereabouts when her parents were murdered, she said she was at a property she owned in Vermont. She wasn't charged with the murder of her parents, though she had purchased, in the months leading up, a firearm of the very same type that had killed them. She was considered a person of interest, and as such, she did not benefit from her parents' death due to the Slayer's statute. Her parents had millions, so a likely motive if she was indoctrinated into the Zizian cult. After all, what do the Zizians believe? The end justifies the means, so your parents have to go, sorry, but think of those millions of dollars. We'll get you new parents, suck on that. And guess what? So Michelle Zajko was eventually tracked down about a week after her parents' bodies were discovered brutally. She was tracked down to a hotel in Chester City, Pennsylvania, and who was she staying with in the hotel?
Oh,
it's mad, folks. You'll never believe it. It was Ziz Lasota. Somehow, Ziz returned. Ziz Lasota was found back from the dead, back from the watery grave. She lives still. Turns out Ziz was alive the whole time and just faked her own death. Who thinks of this shit? Stranger than fiction. Ziz was in the hotel room, lying on the floor, completely unresponsive, and had to be carried out. Ziz was in the room with another person, a 24-year-old Daniel Blank. Daniel Blank had been Michelle's roommate for a time, and also provided Michelle's alibi for her parents' murder. He's been described as a simple and gentle person, but easily swayed and manipulated. Both Ziz and Daniel Blank were arrested, though Ziz was bailed out after a few months, $50,000, and promptly vanished once again. Michelle Zajko had lived in the Bay Area for a time and was highly educated and had very high-paying, prestigious jobs, and was, of course, a Zizian.
So, any thoughts so far, guys? Because I can tell you, even after this is over with and done with, I'm going to have to add more of myself to the story because once again, the trials for these murders, like I said, trying to think out loud, but though, I do believe at the lowest it would be 4 murders total. But I keep thinking it was, oh no, wait. That's actual people they killed. It's 6 murders total because they themselves killed 4 actual people, and 2 of their own members were also killed in the process of these attacks. And like I said earlier, felony murder, you don't necessarily have to kill the person yourself, but you have to be involved in the actual, planning and or committing these acts, which, as you just heard, at least one of them. No, wait, the border agent killed 1, and Curtis Lincoln. So there's your 2. That's going to make this a total of 6. I know you only know of 4, the 2 felony murders of their members, and the parents just now, but and the border agent. So I guess it's probably there is another murder still coming, and I'm not sure if he gets on about the suicides themselves, but I have more on that if he doesn't. So it'll be okay. Back to the show.
We don't know exactly how Michelle and Ziz met. Probably through rationalism, commenting on each other's posts, and then Ziz was always described as a very manipulative person. So Michelle and her own partner and roommate, a person named Alice Monday, they began to get to know some Zizians. They lived in the Bay Area, just a couple of miles from the RV park where the Zizian cult lived. They lived there for a while, got really big into it, and then they moved. The two of them, Michelle and Alice, they moved across country
to
Coventry, Vermont. Isn't that weird? So did Michelle Zajko kill her parents? We don't know. But about a year before her parents were brutally murdered, Michelle had written this in her blog, because they all have blogs.
Oh, yeah.
Ziz informed me that the only way I could gain her trust was to murder Alice, her roommate in Vermont, preferably soon. Ziz helpfully suggested I use a gun with a potato as a makeshift suppressor, and that I might destroy the body with lye, and then told me that after I should video call Ziz and show her the body before I destroyed, so she could get proof positive that I'd really done it. And if I didn't do it, Ziz planned to drive across the entire continental United States to murder me. Now, Michelle didn't murder her roommate, but Ziz did drive all the way across the entire continental United States. And then a little over a week after her parents were murdered, Ziz was arrested pretty close by. As I said, neither Michelle nor Ziz were arrested for the actual double homicide, but they were viewed as mighty close to it. It ain't no coincidence. And both Ziz and Michelle, after that, they vanished once again. And so now, in this story, we're getting close to where it all began. January 2025, with the murder of David Malin. Earlier that month, January 2025, a young woman who called herself Connie, real name Teresa Youngblood, called a realtor asking to view a property in Coventry, Vermont. This was an extremely remote cabin deep in these New England woods.
That's not suspicious.
What Teresa Azizian was, wanting to do to get a cabin deep in these woods that was near the cabin Michelle Zajko and, the other Azizians had, were they trying to create this little community of compounds deep in their Vermont woods where they could just be Zizians all they wanted?
Yes.
We don't know, but it's kind of looking that way. Were they trying to have this little cult in the forest? Teresa seemed very eager to view this cabin. Of course, herself, her fiancé Max Snyder, and their friend Ophelia Buchholz were all Zizians too. Teresa Youngblood had said goodbye to her mother and moved out of the family's home to live with a friend back in May of 2024. She also changed her phone number. Soon after being unable to contact her, her parents, they reported her missing. And both of her parents told police that her behavior kind of changed in recent years, and they believed that she was lying about where she was going and who she was seeing. They also said that she had disconnected from childhood friends, and they had become concerned that she was being forced, to act this way. They also guessed that she might be in a controlling relationship. Police told Teresa's parents, though, that because, she was an adult, she was free to make her own decisions. And investigators later determined that there was no reasonable concern for her safety, so no missing persons report was actually created. So where did she go? We still don't really know. Not much is, in fact, known about what the Zizians were doing over 2023 and 2024. However, in November of 2024, Teresa and Max, who had known each other since their private school days, they applied for a marriage license. Though by this stage, Max would soon be in jail on murder charges. See, also in January of 2025, two of the Zizians, they were getting ready to go on trial in April, this coming April, regarding the murder of Emma Bourhain and the attempted murder of Curtis Lind. They would rather not do that. They would rather not go on trial for those crimes, and the only witness there that day, who was not a Zizian, was Curtis Lind. This had been something they'd planned since it had originally happened. No
Well, yeah, the next part's really fucking sad. And, yeah. I'm taking a brief second for palate cleanser because, like I said, it's pretty fucked up what you're about to hear. Because, yeah, killing your parents, I mean, really, it's disgusting. Killing a federal agent, I don't know, probably not the best idea, and pretty well fucking disgusting in its own right. But what comes next is fucking diabolical and just sickening. It's like imagine watching like an awesome movie and thinking, oh, this character is awesome, this, that, and the other. They've surpassed all this horrible things happening to them, and they're fine, and da 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 da. And sadly, right as you think that, I don't know, the horror movie Jason Voorhees guy appears out of nowhere and just, I don't know, picks them up by their skull and rips their face off or something. Yeah. And it's really bad when real life starts to imitate things like movies and crap like that. Because it's like, sometimes you just can't win, no matter what. You can do everything right. You can do everything you're supposed to do, be a good person, and all that other shit. And even then, bad guys still win.
No doubt. And once again, the end justifies the means. And, thinking about it rationally, how are we not going to spend our lives in prison? Kill him. Time to collapse the timeline on Curtis Lind. And the Zizian to do it, Max Snyder.
Vallejo police are investigating the city's first homicide of the year. Police say they were called to 3rd and Lemon Streets just after 2:15 this afternoon. Officers say they found one man who had been stabbed. They took that person to the hospital where he later died.
On January 17th, 2025, Max Snyder was seen wearing all black, loitering outside Curtis Lind's home. Curtis seen him. He goes out, "What the hell are you doing here?" Max then grabbed Curtis Lind and stabbed him multiple times with a very large knife. Curtis dropped like a sack of potatoes. Max walks away before quickly, about facing, walking over to Kurt as he lay on the cold ground, went down to him and slit his throat. To be sure, Max Snyder was arrested and charged with murder. His fiancée was on the opposite side of the country, about to commit a murder of her own.
Facing a murder charge with 2 enhancements. He's accused of lying in wait and killing his 82-year-old Vallejo landlord, Curtis Lind, on January 17th. But investigators say Lind's death was connected to another attack on him back in 2022. Lind's family posted on GoFundMe saying Curtis was the victim of an unprovoked violent attack by 3 young adults on his Vallejo property. He miraculously survived being stabbed multiple times.
Teresa had been traveling with Ophelia, and they had stayed at a hotel in Vermont. Staff there, becoming concerned with seeing firearms and tactical gear, were like, well, that's not the normal shit to wear around, and they informed the authorities, who began to trail them. This eventually led to a traffic stop, and to the deaths of Agent Chris Malland and Ophelia Buchholz. Inside their vehicle were hollow point ammunition, gas masks, night vision cameras, and another firearm that once belonged to Michelle Zajko, who may have killed her parents with it. And so, you have 6 deaths associated with the Zizian cult. Emma Borenian, Rita and Richard Zajko, Curtis Lind, David Malland, and Ophelia Buchholz. Max Snyder has been charged with Curtis Lind's murder, Teresa Youngblood's been charged with David Malland's murder, and 2 of the Zizians are currently in jail for the attempted murder of Curtis Lind and the actual murder of Emma Borenian. Who knows if, now that Curtis Lind is dead, who knows if, what will happen at that trial. Maybe they will even walk free. And nobody is quite sure who murdered Richard and Rita Zajko, though we can hazard a guess Police then began a nationwide search for Michelle Zajko, and of course, the Zizian's leader, Ziz Lasota. As I said, this case is insane in every conceivable way. Who knows how big the Zizian cult is at this stage? It's probably, I mean, you'll find some people out there who'd be only mad to join. Scratch that. Not all of them are actually still out there. On February 16th, 2025, both Ziz Lasota and Michelle Zajko were arrested in Allegheny County, Maryland. Arrested alongside those two was also Daniel Blank, who, if you remember, was arrested with them both previously, not long after the Zajko double homicide. So all three of them stuck together since, it seems. They were all linked to some property in Chapel Hill, North Carolina, where it seems the Zizian cult moved to after it had to leave Curtis Lynn's land in California. The three suspects, Ziz Lasota, Michelle Zajko, and Daniel Blank, face multiple charges, including trespassing, obstruction of justice, and possession of a handgun in their vehicle. Allegedly, they were arrested after trying to camp in a white van on private property in Allegheny County. The property owner saw their van, told them to get the hell out of here. They didn't. So the owner called the cops, and when the police showed up, they found all three of them in that van with plenty of firearms, handguns, rifles, and ammunition. And so that takes us to the story of this vegan, genius, trans, death cult up to now. I mean, that's the only adjectives like the news media that I've been reading about has been using to describe Zizians. There's probably a hell of a lot more adjectives you could use to describe them. Biggest one,
Dick.
batshit insane,
Yeah.
and pretty murderous. It's a lot to wrap your head around. You know, that's why I actually wanted to cover this story, because I was reading into it and I began following it, and I couldn't even wrap my head around the timeline and what was happening and who the major players were. So that's kind of why I decided to make this video. Hopefully it made the story a little bit.
I'm going to leave a link in the description of this live in case anybody wants to go and watch Mike's channel. He is very popular. He's an awesome creator, and he talks about a crap ton, literal crap ton of cases throughout the world. But and by the way, you know. Okay, so I have to be up here. Interesting. But yes, that was pretty soon after the arrest of Lasota and Daniel or whatever the hell her name was. That's they were all transitioning from men to women. I don't want to step on anybody's toes or anything like that, but I have no respect for murderers and such like that. It is what it is. Are you able to hear me fine or no? Oh, don't worry about answering. I just heard myself. Yeah. Okay, now we're not done with the story just yet, even though we're just about to get to the trials. Of course, we're not done with the story, but there is more information that's already been released and everything else. And I am putting that right now, and that's what we're going to get into next. Yay! Because the bodies are not done, my friends. There are more. We just don't know about them yet. I mean, there's definitely at least a couple more that's already been found. So, yeah, very, very good. Okay, as I said in the first place, charges have been filed in federal court, California, Pennsylvania, Vermont. Now remember, I'm saying all that hasn't been charged yet. There is nobody that has been charged in regards to the murders of the Zajko parents. to this day. Nobody has. And there's also been charges filed in Maryland because in February 2025, Satchko and I think it was Lesotho or whatever, had been arrested for weapons and all that, and the trespassing, which he did talk about. Now, other than the 6 deaths that have already been completely, basically locked into, there has been also 2 suicides. It's like a suicide, I forget what it's called, like not a pact, but cluster? Yeah, I think they call it a cluster. There's been at least 2 suicides and 2 nervous mental breakdowns caused by the Zizian cult leader himself. And these occurred before, and not at the same time, mind you. They were a good year or so in between. All right. And I have one more now. Now, first I just need to be a little heads up what happens, and then I'm going to give you a little bit of head on information from one of the, I would guess I call them survivors out of San Francisco. I'm not sure if they remember yet or anything like that. Some of these things like this, half research and the other half I'm basically wait and read about talking to you guys. All right. Chronicle reports on 2 instances of mental breakdowns by individuals who became heavily involved in the Berkeley-based rationalist movement, and 2 cases of suicide which had direct links to the Zizians. There have only been a few reports in the last month from court appearance by members of the group we're calling the Zizians, who all seem to have been in the thrall of the writings and beliefs of a trans woman named Ziz. Birth name Jack Amadeus Lasota. I think what went wrong with your kid. I'm not saying it's a bad name, but we probably should not put Amadeus or something like that in the name. I'm just saying, you asked her for trouble. Even if everything turns out fine, somebody's going to make fun of you. He's probably cool. All right, as we know, 6 people are dead due to violence attributed to or very likely linked to Lasota and her acolytes, who all believe in an offshoot philosophy of rationalism that fears a coming into humanity at the hands of artificial intelligence, adheres to a strict vegan lifestyle, and beliefs that the hemispheres of the human brain are gendered and can be in conflict with each other. Or as we translate that into, batshit crazy, okay? Now, here in the Bay Area, the first death that brought the group onto our radar was the brutal stabbing of 82-year-old Curtis Lind. Of course, all right, let me just jump right away to what was supposed to be important. I read this like a month or so ago, so I forgot. They tossed all that shit at the beginning. All right. All right, there we go. The Chronicle's reporting team that has continued digging into the Zizians and reports on how rationalist ideas have pushed at least 2 people who may or may not have been psychologically vulnerable to begin with to have psychotic breaks or mental collapses. It says one individual who chooses to remain anonymous after being in prison for an assault that took place during one such mental break. There's an inherent stress in concluding that humanity is heading towards an apocalypse that will kill everyone you care about. If that's the case, personally, I believe these were already mentally disturbed people, of course, that were being pushed gradually well over the line than shouldn't have been. I don't see anything criminal about it, to be honest with you. I mean, he's not telling them to kill themselves. He's just saying, come on. He kind of is telling me. Give me a second, I'll explain. They've also now uncovered more about the story of a young trans woman from Poland, Maya Pasek, whose name has been mentioned in multiple rationalist forums as being a victim of Ziz and her teachings. Pasek took her own life in March 2018, jumping off a building in her native Krakow, about 2 months after coming out as transgender, and a year after traveling to the Bay Area to attend the rationalist conference put up on by CFAR, the Center for Applied Rationality. Pasek's girlfriend, who had moved with her to the Canary Islands in 2017, ostensibly to start their own rationalist movement, tells the Chronicle that her suicide was likely spurred by a confluence of factors, including her overall mental state. But Lasota had been in significant contact with Pasek and had allegedly convinced her that her two brain hemispheres were split, one male, one female, and that her female half was suicidal due to her being trans. Pasek, in one of her final writings in February 2018, wrote in a comment on Lasota's blog that suicide was the obvious choice for bearers of selfish utility functions who expect negative utility. Kind of sounds like someone who's trying to make themselves sound a little bit more smarter than what they actually are, but that's just my personal opinion. Anna Salomon, the executive director of CFAR, has spoken about the terrifying chill she experienced in several interactions with Lasota, who she believed seemed dangerous. And Salomon tells the Chronicle, Lasota also bragged to me that her theory must be cool because it had a huge effect on her friend, Chris / Maya Pasek. Namely, it had caused Pasek to kill herself. And he was bragging about it. Salomon has admitted to that rationalist meetups and the community she helped create have unwillingly created the perfect breeding ground for a cult. And she has referred to the followers of Aziz as a number of smart, mostly autistic-ish trans women who were extremely vulnerable and isolated, and who were easily manipulated by her. A second suicide linked to the group is that of Texas native Jay Winterford, a trans woman who reportedly met Ziz at a rationalist meetup in Berkeley in 2016. And by 2020, she left the Bay Area. Winterford was living an isolated existence in a cabin with her that her mother owned in Colorado. And as she maintained regular, sometimes antagonistic contact with Lasota and other rationalists through online forums. That contact was often bullying, and in early March 2021, she took her own life shortly after leaving a comment on Ziz's blog saying, I have been trying to destroy my system for months out of a belief that it's done more harm than good. So as I said, as regards to the Zizians are, and I don't believe we're exactly done with all this just yet, that would be now 6 murders and 2 suicides linked to the Zizians. And I'm not going to jump the gun or anything like that. At least I hope not. It does tend to lead me to believe that Lasota was damn near using psychology and everything else to fuck with these people. Like pushing them back and forth over the line, dragging them back, pushing them over the line, dragging them back. You know, almost like somebody that's a sadistic, individual. Would I don't know, choke out a victim and let them come back, choke them out again, let them come back. It's kind of like a God complex. Hey, Amy, how you doing? But all of this sounds like one big story of the fool that thinks he's fucking God. That's exactly what I've been hearing this whole damn time. That's so scary. Oh, what happened? Well, for one, I would take some Benadryl and some, I don't know, and maybe like some caffeine in there if you're not going to take Benadryl. Because it depends on if it's like a sinus thing or whatever. I hope you feel better. But yeah, I learned a whole bunch of people didn't seem to know about the tranny genius cult of vegans that like to murder people. And I was just like, you know what? We got to talk about that again. Because I love, I'm weird. Have you heard about these guys yet, Amy? guys, women, whatever. I don't care. What happened? Oh, Mark Lee. Horrible with news, but I have Google. I'll use my Google powers. But yes, I have been told by Dean if I don't start trying to finish the boys on the tracks murders and the Clinton body count like tomorrow, that he's going to find where I live and I don't know, do something to me. I can't remember what he said. So tomorrow night we're gonna have to talk about that. So yeah. Dun, 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 dun. 1 second. But yeah, things are gonna get much better for this show, at least for quite some time, because there's much more nasty, violent murders that are occurred. I think I'm gonna do an episode very soon on the I'm hoping, I don't know, one of you psychologists or both of you psychologists might want to join, because I'm going to talk about how the mentally and physically disabled people of Japan are treated. Which, if you don't know, lucky you. Sadly, lucky you. Probably the most disgusting fucking thing I've ever seen and heard of in my life. And what some of the cases. How do I put this, guys? There is a TV show that airs in Japan. When translated, its title goes as Retarded Wrestling. I don't think I need to explain more. It's exactly what you think it would be upon hearing that title. Sadly. There are professional wrestling matches between people that are mentally and physically disabled, barely know what's going on half the time, and they basically are kind of forced to fight each other and all this other crap for people to do. But it just gets worse from that point on. There's been mass murders and all kinds of other stuff, large amounts of the mentally and physically disabled due to things like this TV show and all this other stuff. In Japan, if you have a family member that has like Down syndrome or it's really bad mental disorder or something like that, they tend to send you to a group home that's far away from civilization and lock you away. But sadly, this has also left many very violent, sick, twisted individuals to be able to know exactly where to find them at when they wanted to commit mass murder. That's wrong. Oh, I said what I want to do is do an episode covering how Japan treats its mentally and physically disabled people. As in, they have a TV show that airs, and it's one of the top-ranking TV shows in the nation of Japan. That's called Retarded Wrestling, and basically, it's I'm not sure without looking more into it, but I have done a bit on whether or not these people know what's going on or are okay with it, or whatever. But they are forced to fight each other for the amusement of the entire nation. And when you are mentally or severely physically handicapped or disabled in Japan, your family will basically send you away from civilization and lock you in a group home. And they do this because they don't want to show you to the rest of the world, because it dishonors the family. And if that's not just sad enough as it is, those group homes, by the way, have led to at least one or more mass murderers of people looking for easy victims or distinctly disabled victims that they wanted to kill. Okay. I had no idea what you were talking about. But yeah, are we talking about that? Richard Allen again? Or lack thereof of being able to actually talk to him? But yeah, as well, she was here earlier, but it's probably really late. Yeah, because it's almost 5. Yeah, like I said, hopefully TJ and as I said, Darlene and vice versa. At least with Darlene, she's gonna come on the show and tell her story, and we're supposed to go on her show and tell my story and stuff. Farmer's coming on. I did have somebody that wanted to come on here to do their first live or whatever, but yeah, they're just being a pain in my ass. So I was just forget it. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I'm so lost. I guess we'll talk about the appeal report or whatever. It is good when I'm trying to get an understanding of the appellate court and all that other stuff is to actually check into it and figure out what all things can be actually appealed and all that other stuff. Now, I might be wrong or whatever. I think the post trial crap or whatever the hell they call that stuff is basically based on the fact of wrongdoings or wrong facts or details. Like basically, they're still fighting the fact that they think he's innocent rather than guilty. Now, when we're talking about the appellate court and everything else, that's more like a technicality thing, I think, ain't it? Or I don't know. Somebody probably should explain it to me, to be honest with you. I never paid too much attention to the whole appellate court thing, unless it concerned, like, obviously, innocent people. But it seemed to be like more about technicalities and stuff like that than it did, You know what I'm saying? And I also have some crazy ass cases I'm going to be talking about soon, including that basically break down the whole system that in regards to basically witnesses and stuff like that. As far as it goes, I want to. No, I mean, honestly, it depends on when everybody wants to look at. I can start doing that tonight, to be honest, because I got a case that's pretty fucking crazy. Boom, 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 boom. Kim Jong-il is like in frowning upon the decision to try to send suspects to his country. The great leader shall not be imposed upon by the American fascist government. I think also soon I'm probably gonna cover I think his name is David Ham. I think that might have been Indiana too. He was a state patrol officer that was blamed in the murder of his wife, who later on was cleared by DNA evidence after all the police and everything turned on him, as in his associates and his comrades all basically turned on him and called him killer, when in fact it was another violent offender who was actually identified using DNA. But also another very famous case. Something else I'm going to do is cover things like frontal lobe damage and all this other stuff, and the killers that were subsequently found with that, including the Texas University shooting. I can't remember his last name at the moment in time, but I know his first name was Charles. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Google is it's giving me a bunch of lists with partial matches and all this other crap that aren't helping me whatsoever. Whoa. No. Man, that's something. Plus, when covering David's hand or whatever, I have quite a few other cases where people were basically blamed by everybody in regards to a homicide involving their significant other. They eventually ended up going to prison for what appears to either be a death sentence or a life term that were later cleared completely of the charges because DNA exonerated them and indicated someone else had committed the crime. Is this Individually stuff in Hello. Let's do these things. I know I'm going to do also one, probably more than one episode on basically violent crimes where somebody was arrested and found guilty and all that good stuff. The crimes that were later exonerated by DNA and many other different reasons. And the tactics and all that used by prosecution and all this other stuff to bypass the fact that they can have DNA or that the DNA doesn't match the perpetrator they are accusing. Kristen. Ooh, did I find it? I think I found it. Nice. I think I found it. Awesome. That means I have to talk about it now. I'm going to have to wait for it. Yes, I found it. Sweet. All right. Pay attention, motherfuckers. All right. All right. And the case of Kevin Green. On September 30th, 1979, Diana Green was struck and severely injured while in her apartment. She received a blow to the middle of the forehead, and as a result, she suffered the loss of her ability to speak or otherwise communicate. At the time of the attack, Diana Green was pregnant. She was transported to the hospital where an obstetrician detected fetal heart tones and concluded that the fetus did not appear to be in jeopardy. On September 30th, 1979, however, fetal heart tones could no longer be detected, and the fetus was considered stillborn. Now, Kevin Lee Green, Diana's husband, says he was not home at the time of the event. He testified that he left the apartment, went to a hamburger stand for food, and when he returned, found his wife had been attacked. An employee of the hamburger stand also told police that Green had been there. Police noted that the food in his possession was warm. Still, he was arrested and convicted on October 2nd, 1980, after his wife, who had received a severe injury causing extensive brain damage and amnesia, testified against him. The entire case against Kevin Green rested solely on the testimony of the victim herself. As there was a complete absence of corroborative evidence during the investigation, it was learned that vaginal slides taken from Diana Green showed the presence of spermatozoa. Kevin Green was found guilty by a jury of second-degree murder for the death of his unborn fetus, the attempted murder of Diana Green, and assault with a deadly weapon on her. The jury also found that the victim suffered greatly bodily injury during the commission of the crime on November 7th, 1980. The court sentenced Green to 15 years to life in state prison. The prosecution based its case on several points. The defendant and his wife pulled often, and he had complained to his friends that he was unable to have sex with his wife during the 8th and 9th month of her pregnancy. Green's wife testified that she and her husband got into another fight on the night in question after she refused to have sex because of her pregnancy. She also testified that her husband began hitting her on the head with a key retractor and bringing up keys. The prosecution used Dr. Martin Brenner as a psychiatrist to establish that Diana Green was a reliable witness. The defense was denied its request to have an independent psychiatrist evaluate her mental state, and Diana Green, who had suffered serious head trauma and had trouble spelling her own last name under oath at the trial, took the stand and served as a sole witness against Kevin Green. Well, I'm pretty sure you guys are saying that that don't sound a bit right yet, because it doesn't. Green petitioned the Supreme Court of the state of California for a hearing after the decision of the original appeal in district court in 1982 affirmed the conviction. After the creation of an offender DNA database in California, a DNA profile from the spermatozoa in Green's case was found to match another felon, Gerald Parker, a serial killer called the Bedroom Basher. For breaking into women's bedrooms, he would rape them, he would murder them, and he confessed to the attack as well as 5 other murders based on this DNA database hit. In Parker's confession, Kevin Green was exonerated and released after spending 16 years in prison. In October 1999, Governor Gray Davis awarded Green $620,000 in compensation for the years he spent in prison for a crime he did not commit. And if you're wondering, I can give you the answer myself. To this day, his wife Diana still believes he's the one that attacked her. Sadly. I had forgotten all about the part that the guy that ended up finally going down for the attack and the murder of the fetus and all that other stuff was an actual serial killer. So that, because it's been many years since I hadn't heard about this case. And if you're wondering how many years he spent in prison to get $620,000, that would be almost 16 years. Ain't that some bullshit? I mean, hell, it's not like, I won't say a third of my life, but at least a quarter or so of it, give or take. I'm sorry, 620 grand, that's not fucking enough. And that also shows they use a phrase for that, tunnel vision. Yeah, basically, they get so interested with one suspect they don't even think of anything else. Kind of like in John Benet Ramsey's case. That the police and many other people are so willing and happy to blame the parents or the family in the situation that they overlook the staggering amount of evidence that quite possibly could point to an outsider doing it just the same. And since we had talked about before the MK Ultra stuff in regards to the serial killers and all that other stuff that claim they were created or trained or whatever by the military or the CIA, they're unless you if you haven't done the research into it, you wouldn't know too much about this murder, but it's pretty infamous. Used to be pretty infamous cold case. Try to pull it up real quick. because this murder was so sickening, violent, and very sexual, and the victim was found inside a church. I think, like the candles that normally would be lit for service and stuff like that was found in places. If you catch my drift, I'd rather not say it. And it was a very famous case that ended up going, 1974, the cold case murder at Stanford Memorial Church at Arliss Perry. She was a very young wife who, I guess she had a bit of arguments or whatever with her husband, kind of like normal stuff. But one night when she went to go pray at the church or whatever, they found her the next day. I prefer not to explain, but I remember the scene. I've seen the pictures. I'd rather not even think about it. It was pretty heinous. Give me a second. I'll see a bit more. But the reason I bring this up was this was a very important case that David Berkowitz himself spoke of very frequently in regards to his satanic cult theory, including Manson and two stuff. And that in itself, and just the violence and how she was left basically posed. I mean, it only reminds me of, I don't know how much you guys know about the Gainesville Ripper. And it really wasn't the fact of who he killed or how he killed them. It's what he did with the victims after they were already dead. That's fucked up, beyond fucked up. I mean, if you don't know, you probably could live the rest of your life not knowing, because it's that bad. I'll give you one scene. After killing a young college co-ed, he proceeded to behead her and propping her head up on her dresser, directing her head at her bed. And her bed, her headless body was propped in a specific way to make it seem like she was committing an act on herself, if you catch my drift. And but he was trying to portray that she was watching herself, if you catch my drift. And that was just one of them. Now, I don't know if you guys remember about that serial killer cannibal cop I told you about. That's literally was killing very young teenage girls and shit. Very close to me, probably like 20, 30 minutes away, not even. Gerard John Schaefer, the former deputy police officer. See, there is a crazy-ass case that, it's not really a case, but honestly, it's just a fucking insane story involving not only him, but Ted Bundy. It also involved Danny Rawling, the Gainesville Ripper, who I just kind of give you a little piece of info on about the head thing. And Sandra London. Now, if you haven't heard the name Sandra London before, well, she's a very famous true crime writer that in her lifetime before she became a writer, she actually worked at the suicide hotline with the man not only known as Ted Bundy. So first off, she was like a co-worker of Ted Bundy, right? When she was younger. At the suicide hotline, yes. Ted Bundy used to be a worker at a suicide hotline. I know that sounds just insane, but yes, this is fact. And after they no longer worked together, she used her, I guess, abilities and her past involving someone like Ted Bundy, and she started working on the cases of a lot of murder cases. But eventually she met Gerard John Schaefer. Of course, this was after. Actually, I'm not entirely sure. I think they used to know each other or date each other like in high school or something. So she gets back with Gerard John Schaefer after he's already been arrested. for 2 murders and 2 kidnappings. And he starts feeding her all this information about all these other crimes and acts and murders he's committed on other girls and what he's done with all this other crap. And then suddenly she just dumps his ass because she no longer is in love with him, because she's now in love with Danny Rollin, the Gainesville Ripper. And I'm not even joking. In fact, I'm going to play it for y'all. I don't know how to, it's just a weird thing to have to explain. He likes to sing in court, guys. Literally, yeah. He's a bank robber, kind of like Israel Keys, but much dumber. And yeah, he basically, he just, well, I'll show you. When he, if you're wondering, by the way, the biggest claim to fame that the Gainesville Ripper Danny Rolling had, he is the inspiration behind the Scream movies. He is Ghostface. So yeah, that's where the whole story and all that other stuff, and how Ghostface kind of props the victims up in movies in fucked up ways and all that other stuff. All that was basically Danny Rolling, just a much more tame version of himself, basically. Now I'm gonna go ahead and I guess I'll look it up first. Amy Rowling in court. It's a trip. Now, he was a really less than intelligent. I want to. It's kind of hard to explain. I mean, he looks smarter than he definitely is. That's all I'll say. But yeah, Sandra London, who used to work with Ted Bundy at the Suicide Hotline, got with her former high school. I guess she liked bad guys, apparently, because she got with the cannibal cop killer, serial killer that killed like 50 girls or something. And Rowling also was, how do I put this? Like Dennis Rader and what's his face? Dennis Rader and Gary Ridgway. There's certain particular serial killers that don't really seem to be caught, like Jeffrey Dahmer, basically. They didn't try to convince people they weren't who everybody thought they were. The best way to explain it was that they say, I don't know, psychology. I don't fucking know which one to call it, but basically, they all said the same thing. It's like they're going around with an extra person that nobody else can see. Danny Rowland called his I think it was the Dark Rider. No, the Mystery Rider. Ridgway. I can't remember, but Dennis Rader called his Dark Passenger. I'm not sure if that's just their way of explaining things because they couldn't understand their own thought process in their head. But it's fucking weird. And now I will introduce you to the inspiration of the Scream movies, Danny Rowling. And he's going to be performing his new hit for you all. FYI. Oh, wait. I don't need the whole damn song. I mean, he wasn't that bad of a singer, actually. He just lays off the sets off. Yeah. Like I said, it's pretty fucked up. I don't want to keep explaining what he did because, yeah.
And a lot of other people believe that there was.
Mine is that. My computer's literally doing what it wants to do. I don't want to watch Peggy. Stop trying to make me watch Peggy. I won't do it. And why did they get up at the right in the motherfucking screen? That's annoying. Thank you. Yes, Officer Audrey.
Please, the court.
Please,
Can I address the court? Sure. Say whatever you want to say. Thank you. I recall the day I first saw you. I reached out to say,
hey, if I thought I'd give you my kid, bro, I'd say it too.
but it was hard to say.
Okay, that down here might actually be Sandra London
So tell me, baby,
herself, right there in that
what
video.
were my
I'm not sure,
words on my
but we're gonna find out that actually be her.
Down the how could you, Mr. Ross, to follow? Mr. Ross, tell me, baby, what were my words? All my tears run together. What were my words? All my tears run together, baby. Just like rain.
Dude, I can totally see why she swooned for his ass, can't y'all? I do believe that is actually her, though. Baby. No. A violent voyeur turned serial killer? Okay, that's like 50 different ones. Give me a little bit more specific than that. What is it? I guess everyone's just doing that something. Cool. Now that I can actually show y'all some of these creepy photos I'm telling you about, I want you to meet Gerard John Schaefer, the cannibal serial killer cop. He's such a lovely person. You trust him, kid, right?
Even the most of his eyes. Ted was obsessed with being the #1 serial killer, and he loved his role as a celebrity killer. When he met me, he said, "Oh, I know you." He said, "Tell me,
Sorry, it's so quiet. It's
is
an
it
old
true
movie.
you got 34 private graves that they don't know about?"
Oh, so it's quiet.
Because he had that, and he thought that he was 2 and 2 ahead of me.
See, by the way, Gerard John Schaefer claims he was innocent until he was stabbed to death in prison. And yes, that's correct. You just heard him admit that killing at least 36
He
or
had
34.
followed my
Yeah.
case.
So which one do you want to believe? The story that he didn't kill anybody?
And that he had killed 2 girls in Washington as a copycat crime, so to speak, on the place of Jessup. And I think those
want you to see the nice person that is Gerard John Schaefer in real life, as he has now passed away, so he can't do so now. But he swore every day until he was murdered in prison that he was innocent. So you guys tell me.
When he met me, he said, "Oh, I know you."
I mean, he just screams like an innocent man. But
Is it true that you got 34, or do you have private graveyards that they don't know about? Because he had 36, and he thought that he was two ahead of me.
Was he reliving all the time his murders?
Such a lovely, delightful
Well, I
fellow.
wouldn't say all the time. I took the.
I just wanted to invite him to a barbecue.
He told me that he had followed my case
So he is
in
one of
the
the top
detective
for
magazines,
Florida who were serial killers.
and that he had killed
Or,
2 girls in
alleged
Washington
serial killers.
as a copycat crime, so to speak, on the place
Because
of
they had
Jessup
no evidence
And I
to
think those
tell
were
you any actual murders. I mean,
in Naysland. And he would tell me that he took them up on the logging road and strangled.
oh, I'm dumb. Derp. Yeah. Fucking hell. Let's make sure that's creepy. Fucking. There we go. That's a creepy looking fucking thing. There we go. Everybody, introducing Gerard John Schaefer.
Ahead of me.
Was he reliving all the time his murders? Well, I wouldn't say all the time. I took the. He told me that he had followed my case in the detective magazines, and that he had killed 2 girls in Washington as a copycat crime, so to speak, on the place of Jessup. And I think those were Ott and Naysland. And he would tell me that he took them up on the logging road and strangled them and had sex with their corpses and went back and had sex with their corpses and cut off their heads. Like, it's a tribute. And I'm thinking,
Okay, still there.
you motherfuckers that wrote that. I said, here's the
I think he fucking. No, it's still there. How's my news?
guy who read it, believed your bullshit, and went out and did something like this. And now he's like bragging to me. It wasn't exactly a brag, it was like a tribute. How many did you get, really, Jerry? They said 34. Did they get all of them? Or do you have private graveyards? I said, Dad, I'm the best. What can I say to somebody like that? Right?
Don't he look innocent, y'all?
What can you say?
He's like a good-natured person to me.
You're left without any kind of rational response, because if you say, Ted, it's all bullshit, he's going to say, no, it's not. I know. And he knew, see, because he had lived it. And I hadn't lived it, except through what was written about me. And he was doing it based on what he had read. So he had 36. He wanted to be the best. He was obsessed because they said I had 34.
You remember how I told you a long time ago, it seems like you look into a killer's eyes and just see something's not right there or something's dead inside them? A lot of people actually make fun of people that actually say that, but look at them, look at that man's eyes. You tell me your thoughts.
And he was afraid that I had ones that he didn't know about. So, and he was always trying to get me to say, no, that's all I got, 34, you know. But I never would say that.
It's the same reason I say that, you know, once you kill somebody, you murder somebody,
he was
you
concerned
start to
about
have,
the number.
you know, I guess
And it
maybe
was
your
my
soul,
own way
whatever
of
you want to call it,
naming
starts to
him
die.
back by
Well,
saying,
the more that you end up doing it or whatever, the worse it gets.
you're going to fry, and I'm going to be here.
And look how fucked up his
Like
eyes
said,
are.
the
And remember that he has claimed to kill as many as 54,
the best there ever was.
but that was still during his whole,
Just go crazy. I'd take out my little thing from the Palm Beach Post. Read that, man. Cult. First page. Palm Beach Post. Cult. I'm the leader of the cult. He was a sickie.
FYI, guys, there was damn near probably less evidence against him than there was in Delphi. Nah, in its own way. For the kidnapping, he was fucked. But for any murders, yeah, there was like no evidence. Nada. Any thoughts? What you think? Innocent? Guilty? What? Well, y'all go ahead and have a nice night. See you tomorrow, whatever. Thanks for coming. Appreciate you all.